by Dr. Vasant Gowarikar and others for uniformity to style and language. She has numerous articles in leading English and Marathi national dailies. She has written books on study skills, doctor-patient communication skills, and communication in healthcare. She has also written Ahilyabai's Maheshwar, a book on Ahilyabai Holkar and her capital Maheshwar in Madhya Pradesh. As far as research is concerned, she has written a feasibility report on the creation of a special education zone in the planned New Hill station of Lavasa near Pune. She has numerous papers and seminars on education, feminism, sociology, archaeology, excavation, history, banking, market for Indian higher education, Western Indian trade from 200 BC to 1500 AD. Over a dozen papers in various national and international fora on a range of subjects from Ashoka's conversion, medieval military architecture to fresh feminist look at published archaeological reports from India. She is the recipient of several grants and fellowships. For instance, she has the grant from Australia-India Council for presenting papers at the World Archaeological Congress at New Delhi. She has grant in aid for Madhwani Shipping for conducting research at India Office Library. She has grant in aid from RKBC, New York, for visit to Columbia University, New York, for research. She has a grant in aid from Esser Shipping for research at the Asiatic Society of Bombay, India, and Maharashtra Archives. She has the Dorothy Cameron Fellowship, University of Sydney, for postdoctoral research in feminist Indian archaeology. She is the holder of 2 Avabai Wadia research fellowships given by K.R. Kama Indological Institute. She has also rendered a number of lectures. Some of the topics on which she has given public lectures are history of salt, on Ahilyabai, Mother of Malwa, and many more. She has video on various aspects of world history and heritage in the Sachi Virasat channel hosted by YouTube. She has experience in diverse fields and has worked in various capacities. She has worked as a web journalist at Doha. She has edited the monthly tabloid in the IT sector. She has worked as income tax inspector. She has worked as a manager for business development. She has worked as a research associate and also as director of productivity management. Madam's which is productivity management, is Madam's company, which is focusing on learning assistance. So we are really glad to have such a multifaceted personality with us. A warm welcome to her.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I request Vice Principal Dr. Sneha Dioskar ma'am to felicitate our chief guest.
सर थोड़ा बाद में चालूच होता.
Like this or that. If you take YouTube, you probably would want that. Sorry? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Meher Mistry, and thank you everyone for inviting me. And I'm really, really happy. And I'm really, really happy to be here. So, I said I'm going to talk about the salt tax. How many of you know about the salt tax? Hands up. Wonderful. Quite a few. Now, another question. What do you think was the reason for the salt tax? After all, इतना चोटी भर तो सॉल्ट लगती है, तो उसके टैक्स के बारे में इतना हंगामा क्यों? Did you feel that? How many of you had this question? Come on, show of hands. You know, I also had that. You are not alone. कि भाई सॉल्ट टैक्स क्या बना है और उसके लिए ऐसा क्या था कि गांधी जी ने सॉल्ट टैक्स का सत्याग्रह शुरू किया? एंड इवन मोर इम्पोर्टेंट, व्हाई इंडिया के इतने सारे लोग उनके साथ खड़े हो गए? आज मैं उसी की कहानी बताने वाली हूँ कि एग्जैक्टली व्हाट द सॉल्ट टैक्स वाज एंड व्हाई वी स्टूड विथ हिम. Do you know that salt is important for life? You know, salt is as important as water, oxygen, and food. You're right. If from bacteria to the elephant, from an ant to grass, any living organism needs salt to live. If we don't have salt in our bodies, enough salt, we are going to die. That's for sure. सोचा नहीं था ना? You only think of, at least I used to think of salt only and only when खाने में ज्यादा हो या कम हो. Otherwise, we don't think of salt. So, how do the plants get salt? Can we remove this? So, how do the plants get salt? Plants get salt from the soil. They absorb it with the water. And animals, you know, this is how they get salt. They eat salty soil. Can all of you hear me? Right, Adava? They eat salty soil. How about switching off the lights? They'll be able to clearly see the sides better. Slide. So you see that these are elephants in Thailand, and these are goats in the Alps, and these are sambar in our jungles. All of them are eating salt, a salty soil. Now, for we humans, we are smarter than them. We started making our own salt. We started making our own salt, and we keep adding it. That's why making salt, not everyone can make salt. At least these lights should go. Can you see it better now? Okay. This is enough for me. यहाँ नहीं हो तो भी चलेगा. So we humans started making salt, and because everyone has to buy salt, kings from all over the world, from thousands of years, they charge a tax on salt. So now give me a second. Before we go back, today we have salt plentifully. Kahan bhi jao aapko mil jata hai. In fact, today World Health Organization is telling Indians to eat less salt. But that was not the case. During British times, when we were under colonial rule, the British salt tax was so high that a very large number of people couldn't buy salt. Namak jaisi cheez hame nahi muhaiya thi, क्योंकि महंगी थी. कहानी हम उसी के बाद देंगे. So as I was saying, for thousands of years, kings across the world, whether it's French, Russia, China, England, you name it, they had charged salt on tax. Sorry, tax on salt. So did our country, right from Mauryan times, Ashoka ke pehle se. So then what was the big deal? The big deal was that our salt tax was very little, very nominal. It didn't bother us. And more important, there were no restrictions on making or selling salt. So, hey, what happened? Okay. So you see, such bullocks, thousands and thousands of such bullocks laden with salt were going from these areas, all the seashore areas where people made salt. There was nothing that stopped them from taking all the salt from there or selling anywhere else in the country. These are the other two areas from which the salt went to the interiors. But the minute the British won at Buxar, the minute British armies defeated this Mughal emperor, Shah Alam II, and the Nawab of Awadh. Awadh is around Lucknow. Okay, so they defeated him at a place called Buxar in 1764, which was in Bihar. The minute that they defeated them, the English imprisoned the emperor and then forced him to give them the Diwani of what was known as the Bengal Suba. Now, what is a Diwani? A Diwani is the right to raise taxes and charge taxes. Okay. So now you see these Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha, Bangladesh, all of this was part of that Bengal Suba. So the British took the Diwani and then started calling the Bengal Suba. They had to change their names. So they started calling it the Bengal Presidency. So the Bengal Suba, which was part of all that, now becomes the Bengal Suba. And even more important, what they did, they made salt a monopoly, which meant anyone who produced salt in that area had to sell it to the government. And the government would then add its tax and sell it to the wholesalers. So what the things came from the producers to the wholesalers to us stopped. It went from the producers to the government to the wholesalers and then to the retailers and then from there to us. Get that? Is that clear? Now what happens? They wanted to charge tax. So in 1765, they made the monopoly and they increased the price of salt. Suddenly, wholesale price of salt. So they started selling to wholesalers at ₹2.50 a mound. 1 mound of Bengal salt was equal to 37.5 kilos of salt. Sorry, 37.750 kilos of salt. Because we can't understand. I couldn't understand a mound. So I went and looking for, so, okay, what was a mound? It was 7 kilos, 750 grams. So by the time, by the time something goes from the retailer, from the wholesalers to us, the prices shoot up. So the same thing happened with salt. And the salt, which before the British came, was available only for 40 or 50 paisa a mound. 40 or 50 paisa a mound, 37.5 kilos. Suddenly it became 6 to 7 times more expensive. You started getting it for 3 to 4 kilo. And then from 1778, the price went up to 5 or 6 kilos a mound. Okay. Now, remember one thing. Tell me, in hot and humid Mumbai, when you walk around in the May sun and don't drink anything, no nimbu pani, nothing, what happens? Do you feel tired? Drained? Completely? So that happens because you're losing salt, which is replaced as soon as you drink water or have nimbu pani. So, but we are not working in the sun every day. Those who work every day in the sun will need 7 to 8 kilos of salt per year, which means a family of 4. Let us think of today's families. Let us not even think of old-time families, which were much bigger. So a family of 4 needed almost 1 mound of salt, or 37.750 grams of salt a year. Now, if you convert this 3 or 4 rupees that they were getting salt by 1764 per kilo, it comes to about 11 or 12 paisa per. So we think it's cheap. But was it? Think again. Because, hey, why is it not? Oh, okay. Because the Bengali worker then, the Bengali worker then earned only and only 1.5 to 2 rupees a month, which means in the salt that the Bengali worker before the Mughal time, before the company rule, he could earn in, say, 10 days of his earnings. He started needing 2 months of earnings. And after 1788, he needed up to 6 months of earnings. Can you afford that? Can we afford that? Hey, what am I doing wrong? There's no way we can afford that sort of money for salt. खाएंगे क्या? कपड़ा कहाँ से आएगा? बाकी चीजें कहाँ होंगी? So which means, what happened now that the tomatoes are over 200 rupees a kilo? Does mom buy tomatoes? At least I don't buy any more tomatoes. So people stop buying salt. But tomatoes से तो परेशान नहीं होती. Without salt, life becomes difficult. Because we saw one day without salt is so difficult for us. Now imagine going a year without salt. How weak you will be. Because it's not just limbu pani. There's no salt in for your food. There's nothing. So what happens? Sorry. We have gone, I missed a slide here, and there should have been a slide. What happened was, because people couldn't work, they were so weak, they couldn't work in their fields. Because they couldn't work in their fields, what happens to the crops? Very little crop. Because very little crop, what happens to the prices? They go up again. This is happening, okay? Remember this. This is happening all around them. And then, see, this is the slide that I was looking for. ये आपका यहाँ करना है, कहाँ करना है? यहाँ करना है, okay. Then, horrible. In 1768 and 1769, crop, बारिश नहीं आई. अच्छा, बारिश नहीं आई तो normally क्या होता था? Even today, our governments do that. They give a tax break. कि भैया आपको जो, because ultimately जिस प्रॉपर्टी के लिए आप टैक्स कर रहे हो फार्मर्स को, उसके लिए कुछ इनकम तो चाहिए. And the income used to come from the crops. Crop नहीं हुए. But the government didn't give them any relief. Balki, they created more problems. Because how many of you have seen Lagan? Lagan में टैक्स कैसे देते थे? लगान इज अ टैक्स, प्रॉपर्टी टैक्स. लगान में टैक्स कैसे देते थे? पैसे से या अनाज से? अनाज. So the government, suddenly the British government changed the rules. पहले हम आपका अनाज वनाज नहीं लेंगे, आप हमको पैसे में दो. पहले ही क्रॉप्स नहीं, पहले ही पैसा नहीं, ऊपर से जो टैक्स देने के लिए रखा हुआ था वो भी आप नहीं ले रहे हो, क्या करें? So they had to sell it. पर खरीदने वाला कौन? ये वही नालायक कंपनी के अधिकारी बहुत सस्ते में खरीद लिया. So people sold everything क्योंकि बहुत सस्ते में मिला तो उतना पैसा नहीं मिला. So they took everything that they had. And then the year after, disaster struck. In 1770, there was no rain, nothing, nada, zero. पहले ही पैसा भी नहीं है, पानी भी नहीं है, आप वीक हो, खाना भी नहीं है. What do they do? You know, people ate, कुछ भी नहीं है इसलिए, they ate grass. अब वो ग्रास भी खाता हो गया बारिश के बगैर. They ate leaves. All the trees of Bengal were also denuded. वैसे ये नहीं, वैसे बगैर पानी के गिर रहे, जो बचे वो हम खाया. Starvation. Because of the bodies were so weak, they couldn't digest those leaves and grass. So जो भी ये था, people died. कितने? Thousands, hundreds of thousands. In fact, a lot more. One more thing. खाने के साथ क्या हुआ? क्योंकि खाना नहीं था, तो जो चावल 1767 में, 1768 के पहले आपको एक मौन यानी 37 kilos 750 grams जो 40 पैसा में मिलते था. In 1770 there was a gentleman called Hunter. उसने अपने experiences great famine के लिखे. He writes कि for 13 rupees amount भी नहीं मिल रहे थे. Imagine कितना महंगा था. Not 4 is 10 times. That's 350 times. No rice. No rice. जिएंगे कैसे लोग? That famine was called the Great Famine of Bengal. उसमें 1 crore died. Or maybe at least 1 crore died. Imagine. Okay. Which meant 33% of all Bengalis died. Because so many Bengalis died, thousands upon thousands of villages were depopulated. With high number, nothing. Okay, we have to go back. पर केवल लोग मरे नहीं, केवल मरे तो डिजास्टर था ही, पर उससे बड़ा डिजास्टर था. Among those who died were a number of Bengali weavers. ये जो बंगाली वीवर थे वो बंगाल के इकोनॉमी के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है. Because before the famine they used to make hand woven 165,000 different varieties of cloth, which were exported to the East, to Africa, to Europe, so everywhere in the world. So जो पैसा आता था ना बंगाल में, Bengal was rich, but that was because of these weavers. अब वो मर गए तो क्या हुआ? उनके साथ वीविंग की उनकी स्किल्स कर ली गई. This is what I told you. Yeah, this is just some of the varieties of Bengal textiles that we can find today. There were many more then. This is a rare example of Dhaka Malmal, which is still in a museum today. The Dhaka Malmal, जिसके बारे में कहानियां हैं ना, वो शहजादी पहन के आ गई थी. Have you ever heard that story? Apparently, I used to hear this when I was a child. कि वो इतनी transparent, इतनी महीन थी कि the Mughal Shahzadi, she wore that. And everybody thought she was naked because it was so thin. It was so beautiful. Of course, it's a story, it's not true. But just to show how beautiful it was. Okay. Now, besides these, but that was not the only. 1770 famine was the largest in recorded history of India. इसके पहले ना कभी उतना हुआ इतना हुआ. But that was not the only one. क्योंकि sort सबको असर कर ही रहा था. So between 1770 and 1947, there were 5 major famines. And in that 5 major famines, another 2,37 died. So total कितने हुए? 2,37 plus lakhs plus 1 crore. अरे यार बोलो तो सही, 3,37 lakhs. So the grand total, इतने लोग केवल famine से starvation से मरे. और famine starvation समझ में नहीं आ रहा. That's why you're going to see some pictures. There's nothing left. Look at the child. Look at the child. And this one at the bottom, this affected me most. They have nothing. They're dying there. Akele mar rahe bachche. Kyunki maa baap to pehle hi mar chuke, jo whatever they had, they kept feeding the child if they could. So these are 2 abandoned kids from South India. And this is the site of what was happening in Bengal in 1943. उसकी कहानी फिर कभी, दैट्स अनदर बैड स्टोरी. बट व्हाट इज शॉकिंग इज इफ यू लुक हियर यू विल फाइंड गिद्ध बैठे हैं. ये सब तो ठीक है, पर व्हाट इज द नंबर 1 crore or 2 crore really mean? Think again. Sorry, यहाँ होना क्या? In 2019, the population of Mumbai was 1,19,000,000, which means had it been 1970, मुंबई में रहने वाले 5 में से 4 लोग मर जाते. Most of us wouldn't have been alive. ये 1770 होता था. And then when you try to, और फिर but that's just 1 crore. बाकी 2,37 पे क्या? So for that, we'll have to think of everyone in Calcutta, Chennai, Pune also dead. See her eye? To think of so many dead? COVID में क्या कुछ 10-12 लाख मेरे, it was a national disaster. Imagine what it means to have so many dead. Now, before I talk a little further, let us see the picture. क्योंकि picture के बगैर तो कुछ समझ में नहीं आता. At that time, in the 18th century, India was divided in 3 presidencies. बड़ी वाली बंगाल प्रेसिडेंसी, देन ये छोटा मद्रास प्रेसिडेंसी, और सबसे छोटा हमारा मुंबई प्रेसिडेंसी. ओके, नाउ एवरी प्रेसिडेंसी हैड अ गवर्नर. उस गवर्नर का काम क्या था? हड़प करना दूसरों के ये और अपनी ये बढ़ाना. दैट वाज ऑल द जॉब ही डिड. सो बाय 1805 ये बंगाल प्रेसिडेंसी, याद है पहले कैसी छोटी थी? राइट अप टू नॉर्थ इंडिया. बीच में केवल दिल्ली और छोटा अवध. पहले बड़ा था बाय 1805 क्योंकि these people keep eating into it. So, but then this, so all the people in this large area, North India, they had to pay tax, salt tax, which means everyone here couldn't eat salt. Salt की परेशानी सबको हो गई. जब होता क्या है कि जब you have some heavy taxes, heavy cost, और यहाँ सस्ता है, तो what do people do? Smuggle. Next slide, please. Exactly what is happening in Bengal today, because Bengal beef and meat are very expensive, so they are smuggling our cattle. तो यही बात हो रही थी. नेक्स्ट वन. यही बात हो रही थी कि लोग स्मगल करने लगे. जो बात we saw that slide 2 slides back, please. इसके पीछे, उसके पीछे ये जो सारा एरिया था ना, होलकर, राजपूताना, इस सब एरिया में सॉल्ट टैक्स नहीं था. तो ऑब्वियसली सॉल्ट सस्ता था. सब सस्ता था तो लोग स्मगल करने लगे. अब जब स्मगलिंग होता है तो क्या होता है कि टैक्स नहीं दिया जाता. जब टैक्स नहीं दिया जाता तो सरकार का घाटा होता है. So the government wanted to पैसे इंडिया से निचोड़ते रहे. नेक्स्ट वन, आगे. उसके बाद तो सबसे पहले क्या हुआ था? बंगाल से लोग, उड़ीसा था जहां पे सॉल्ट बनता था बहुत, एंड दैट वाज अंडर रघुजी भोसले. वैसे उनका रूल तो नागपुर का था, बट ही वाज आल्सो रूलिंग उड़ीसा. सो द ब्रिटिशर्स आस्क्ड रघुजी भोसले कि भाई आप अपना यहाँ पे भी टैक्स लगाओ. रघुजी भोसले से चल घर जा, नहीं कर रहा है. सो द ब्रिटिश इन्वेडेड इट और ये छीन लिया. वहां टैक्स, सॉल्ट प्रोडक्शन बंद कर दिया और वहां भी सॉल्ट लगा दिया. पर फिर भी बाकी एरिया बचा था ना, अवध था, बाकी एरिया, फिर क्या करें? सो दे ट्राई टू स्टॉप इट इन डिफरेंट वेज. सबसे पहले तो उन्होंने सारे रास्तों पर नमक की चौकियां लगा दी कि वहां इंस्पेक्टर थे the inspectors were supposed to catch hold of smugglers. But the inspectors themselves joined the smugglers. भैया पैसे दो जा. Next. आप लोगों में से कोई हिंदी जानते हैं, पसंद करते हैं, तो मुंशी प्रेमचंद की एक बहुत बढ़िया कहानी है, द सॉल्ट इंस्पेक्टर. मजेदार है. यू डोंट इवन हैव टू रीड इट. यूट्यूब पे उसके बहुत सारे वीडियोज हैं. उसमें से प्रसार भारती का वीडियो बहुत सुंदर है, और उसके अलावा एक एनिमेशन कार्टून टाइप भी वीडियो है. मैं सजेस्ट करूंगी आप जरूर दोनों देखिए. इट्स वेरी फनी. जब इस सब के बावजूद दे कुडंट गेट एनी टैक्स, तो क्या करें? Then they came up with an idea. They decided कि जैसे hedges लगाते हैं, बागड़ लगाते हैं ना खेतों में. Have you seen them when you're traveling? That they have next one. इस टाइप के hedges. बोले हम ऐसे hedge लगाते हैं. But the hedge that they planted was something like this, but not this. Next one. The hedge was 4,000 kilometers long in the middle of India. And it was 14 feet tall, 20 feet wide. और उन hedges पे plants कौन से लगाए थे? Next. Bamboo, बेर. आप कभी वो इंडियन बेर के प्लांट गए? इतने लंबे लंबे कांटे होते हैं. मैं गई हूँ बचपन में, सारे कपड़े फाड़ के आती थी. Next, बबूल एंड करोंदा. कोकण में मिलता है बहुत. पहले सब जगह मिलता था, आजकल किस कोने में बचे हैं. करोंदा एंड आई डोंट नो इसको हिंदी नाम क्या है, इसलिए मैंने प्रिकली पेयर रखा. तो इन ऑल दीज प्लांट्स वो planted so close together कि going past it without scratching yourself, without being injured was impossible. And on top of that, और क्या किया? Next one. On both sides of the hedge, they planted a 10-foot, 20-foot wide fine sand. उसको रोज स्मूथ करते थे ताकि कहां से कोई आ रहा है, कहां से कोई जा रहा है, इफ देयर इज एनी ब्लड पकड़ लो, जाके उसको पकड़ो. आइडिया तो ठीक थी, बट जस्ट सो हाउ डिड वेयर द नेक्स्ट वन. So yeah, this is how big and how much the thing was. It started from Peshawar, came south to Multan, turned southwest till it reached the southern bank of Yamuna, continued along the southern bank of Yamuna to Delhi. Sorry, then from Multan it reached Delhi, then southern bank of Yamuna to Agra. From Agra, via Jhansi, Sagar, it came down to Khandwa in the middle of the country. Then it turned southwest to reach Hoshangabad. Because these were the boundaries. उनको अपने boundary में नहीं आने देना है ना. And then it turned east again till it reached Mahanadi. Mahanadi as the end of Orissa. Just when they were finishing all this, what happened? 1857. 1857 में हुआ क्या हुआ था? 1857 में War of Independence. You're right. Or what happened in the War of Independence? We lost. अंग्रेज फिर जीत गए. But it had another effect on the salt tax. Because when all of India came under the British, they put the Queen Victoria, वहां बैठी रानी, बोले आपकी रानी है. They made Queen Victoria the Queen of England, Queen of India. और जो भी प्राइवेट ये बचे थे, राजे थे, उनको फोर्स किया कि भैया किसी तरह से आप भी सॉल्ट टैक्स लगाओ. So by 1859, 1860, all of India, every Indian right from Sindh and Peshawar and whatnot to Chittagong, नीचे हम सब लोग एक ही salt tax दे रहे थे. Because everybody was not paying the salt tax. Smuggling हो सकता है क्या? नहीं हो सकता. Smuggling stopped. So when the smuggling stopped in 1870, they decommissioned it. Decommission यानी अब उसमें कितने लोग तैनात थे देखिए. That was even funny. इस पर 12,700 चौकियां थी. 12,700 जिस पर sorry 12,700 एम्प्लॉइज थे एंड ओवर 1,000 चौकी. क्यों इन लोगों का काम क्या था? कोई आ जा रहा है तो उसको पकड़ के सॉल्ट टैक्स ले, अगर कोई स्मगल कर रहा है तो उसको पकड़ो, और फिर हेज को भी तो मरम्मत करना था. दे आल्सो हैड टू लुक आफ्टर द हेज. सो रिप्लांटिंग इट, डूइंग इट, ये सारा काम हो रहा था. Next one. This is an example of an old salt chowki near Agra. मुझे आपका पता नहीं, but for me, when I see some pictures, things feel real. तब तक जरा मुश्किल होती है. Next one, please. तो ठीक है, ये सब जब हो रहा था, सॉल्ट टैक्स का पैसा जब ब्रिटिशर्स के पास आ रहा था, वो जाता रहा था. Remember, East India Company was a private company. So किसी भी प्राइवेट लिमिटेड कंपनी में क्या होता है? All profits are shared among the shareholders. जिसके पास शेयर है उसको प्रॉफिट मिलता है. तो इसी तरह से, बिकॉज ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी के शेयर होल्डर्स कहाँ बैठे थे? लंदन में. अच्छा, उनमें एक बहुत बड़ा शेयर होल्डर कौन था पता है? जो ज्यादा लोग बताते नहीं है. ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट खुद उनका शेयर होल्डर थी. तो सारा पैसा हमारा उठ के वहां जाता था. We didn't have, because they were shareholders. They were not interested in you and me. They were interested in Mula. Next one. So कितना पैसा जाता है? सोचिए. Between 1764 and 1820, 50% of all tax revenue, so including salt tax, क्योंकि उस समय salt tax ज्यादा था, property tax कम था, went to London. And after 1857, जब ये बढ़ गया, property tax बढ़ गया, फिर भी salt tax 33% था, वो लंदन जाता था. Next one, please. So, अब ऐसा नहीं कि हम लोग नाराज नहीं थे. Raja Ram Mohan Rai. How many people know the name? Right, the same one, the Sati one. He once used to work. Okay. He once used to work for the salt tax department. So he knew exactly what was happening. And he was a very smart man. So he was the first to raise his voice. What the hell is happening? You're sending so much of our money overseas in tax. Next. So what did the British do? पैसा तो हमारा जा रहा है, हमारे पास कामकाज के लिए पैसा नहीं बच रहा है, सॉल्ट टैक्स में जा रहा है, सब जा रहा है, तो ये उनको पॉकेट में मिल रहा था. That's how England became great. उनका इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन वगैरह जो गाना गाते हैं, वो आपके और मेरे जिम्मे थे. They built factories with that money. और अब ऊपर से करते क्या थे? वो फैक्ट्रीज के जो बना माल था वो वापस आके हमारे वीवर्स, हमारे लोगों को और गरीब करते थे, because we were again buying it. Next one. तो here are two patches जो अभी तक आपको उत्तर प्रदेश में है. और इसकी भी स्टोरी पता है? ये सॉल्ट टैक्स की स्टोरी मजेदार है ना, but we would have lost it. Except for one man, जिनका नाम था रॉय मॉक्सम. नेक्स्ट वन प्लीज. हाँ, बिफोर वी गो, मैंने कहा ये नाराज हो रहे थे, इंडियन नेशनल कांग्रेस भी चिल्ला रही थी. वो भी ये कह रही थी कि क्या लगा रखा है. From its first meeting to the next 10-20 meetings every year, they were asking for the abolishment of salt tax. Next one, please. ऐसा नहीं कि पार्लियामेंट को पता नहीं था, पार्लियामेंट को सब पता था. 1894 में दादा भाई नौरोजी वहां पे चिल्लाए थे. उसके अलावा 1895 में उनके खुद अपने सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट फॉर इंडिया चिल्लाए थे कि इसको अबॉलिश करो. अच्छा, मैंने आई टोल्ड यू दैट इंग्लैंड आल्सो हैड अ सॉल्ट टैक्स. उन्होंने अपना सॉल्ट टैक्स तो 1824 में ही खत्म कर दिया. प्रॉबेबली मेरा ऐसा ख्याल है कि दे थॉट ये तो काले लोग, इनका कौन सोचे. क्योंकि 1836 में एक डॉक्टर थे जॉन क्रॉफर्ड, उन्होंने भी गवर्नमेंट के सिलेक्ट कमेटी के सामने, पार्लियामेंट के सिलेक्ट कमेटी के सामने बताया था कि इसके कारण लोग मर रहे हैं, आप मत लगाओ. और ब्रिटिश सरकार को पैसे की पड़ी थी. उन्होंने कुछ तो भी झूठ मूठ के बहाने बना दिए और सॉल्ट टैक्स जारी रखा. नेक्स्ट वन प्लीज. फिर क्या हुआ? 1923 में, अब 1919 में फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर खत्म हो गई थी, उसमें उनके बहुत इंग्लैंड का पैसा खर्च हुआ था. तो पैसा ले के आप और हम, उन्होंने सॉल्ट टैक्स दुगना कर दिया. सॉल्ट टैक्स दुगना कर दिया तो जाहिर है पीपल वर वेरी वेरी एंग्री. पीपल वर वेरी एंग्री. तो लाहौर कांग्रेस 1929 में the Congress passed the first bill of पूर्ण स्वराज. पहली बार, तब तक तो होम रूल कह रहे थे, हम क्या जाओ हमको चाहिए ही नहीं, आ भाग यहाँ से. एंड दे ऑथराइज्ड महात्मा गांधी कि ठीक है आगे का आप देखो. नेक्स्ट वन प्लीज. सो व्हाट गांधी जी डिड वाज, ही, उस समय एक बात हो रही थी, वी वर ऑल डिवाइडेड, कोई दूसरे से बात नहीं कर रहा था. कास्ट, कम्युनिटी, जिस तरह आज हो रहा है फिर से, रिलीजन, सब हमको डिवाइड कर रहे थे. एंड ही वांटेड टू जॉइन एवरीवन. सो ही थॉट सॉल्ट टैक्स. सॉल्ट तो हर कोई भी जात का हो, कोई भी धर्म का है, कहीं का भी हो, सॉल्ट टैक्स की परेशानी सबको है. सो ही डिमांडेड दैट द सॉल्ट टैक्स बी अबॉलिश्ड. और एक लिस्ट ऑफ डिमांड्स जो कांग्रेस के तरफ से उन्होंने लॉर्ड इरविन वाइसरॉय को भेजी, उसमें था कि सॉल्ट टैक्स अबॉलिश करो. आपको क्या ख्याल है? व्हाट डू यू थिंक द लॉर्ड इरविन डिड? पुट इट इन द वेस्ट पेपर बास्केट. ही पेड, भाग जाओ, कुछ नहीं करते. सो गांधी जी अनाउंस्ड दैट ही इज गोइंग टू स्टार्ट a salt satyagraha, for which he will march from Ahmedabad to Dandi. How much is the distance? 374 kilometers. और ये बुढ़ा 374 kilometers चलकर, he was going to collect salt from Dandi beach, because at that time Dandi beach was a pure untouched beach, and he was going to break the salt law. अब सरकार को लगा यूजलेस. हु इज गोइंग टू पे एनीथिंग फॉर सॉल्ट टैक्स? सॉल्ट कोई इंपॉर्टेंट बात है? द न्यूज़पेपर्स, क्योंकि बाकी दूसरा तो मीडिया था नहीं, तो टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया, द वेस्टर्न न्यूज़पेपर्स, एवरीबडी पब्लिश कार्टून्स मेकिंग फन ऑफ द सॉल्ट. बट यू नो, even some of Gandhiji's own Congress leaders were worried कि ये flop show ना हो जाए. But from history we know Gandhiji was right. He knew what he was doing. जब the salt march started on the 13th of March, 11th March, outside his Sabarmati ashram, he held a meeting. This photograph is from that meeting. You can see people sitting in the river plains on the Vish. There were total of more than 75,000 without anyone trucking them. कोई buses नहीं थे, लोग खुद आए थे. Next one. So on 13th March in the morning, Gandhiji started his salt march. When he stepped out, उनके साथ केवल 78 लोग चल रहे थे. Only 78 of his followers. Okay. ये न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स का हेडलाइंस है of that day कि वो चल पड़े हैं. नेक्स्ट वन. बट पहले दिन से इस तरह से नाचते गाते, people were joining him in hundreds, thousands. So by the time he reached Dandi on 5th of April, do you know how many people were with him? Have a guess? 50,000. Without anyone trucking them, without any motorized transport. All these people were walking with him. Next one. That's the photograph of that meeting on the 5th of April. Look at the crowd. Next one, please. On the 6th of March, 6th of April, Gandhiji walked into Dandi Beach. This is a famous photograph where he picks up the salt. Why could he collect the salt? क्योंकि वो पानी वहां पे आके सूख गया था, नीचे जमा हुआ था salt. That's how we humans learn to make salt. वही salt जमा कर करके. And not just him. Next one. 50,000 जो 50,000 उनके साथ थे ना उस दिन शाम को, एक दिन पहले, उन सब ने तोड़ा. And after that, immediately, whether it's Mumbai or it's Tiruchirappalli or it is Calcutta or Noakhali, Delhi, every place, Congress leaders and others started making salt tax. Protest march. Next one. These are the salt tax process. लोग salt बना रहे थे, बेच रहे थे. They were calling it Swadeshi tax. खुद ही बना के खुद ही बेचो. Okay, so tell me, how could people in Pune make salt? वहां पे तो कोई salt water है नहीं. This is a very funny story. Next one. वो क्या करते थे? जो घर में tax paid salt खरीदा था ना, उसी के पानी में डिसॉल्व करते थे, फिर उसको उबालते थे कि हम salt tax selling that salt. Next one. पर salt tax तोड़ना है, भले हम एक बार पैसा दे चुके हैं उसके लिए, salt tax तोड़ना है. Now, खाना बनाने में salt नहीं हो, तो who gets affected first? The women. क्योंकि हमको बनाना है ना. So for the first time in the Indian history of independence movement, women joined. We walked out of our houses in hundreds of thousands. पूरा देश गूंज रहा है. Imagine, close your eyes, imagine. Everywhere, every corner, there are protest marches, there are slogans, there are people walking around. I feel this old shivers when I even try to imagine it. Next one. अब ये हुआ तो क्या हुआ? Now सरकार जाके. So they wanted to stop the salt tax. बोले नहीं, रहने दो. We don't want. So let us put him, leader को अंदर डाल दो. तो फिर ये salt tax अपने आप ये बंद हो जाएगा. So they arrested Gandhiji and put him in Yerbada jail. Next one. But then everyone outside thought, hey, अब मैं ही गांधी हूँ. I still have to fight. There's a cartoon from that time showing how people joined up, how fired they were. कि ठीक है, हमारे leader को ले गए हो, फिर भी हम will still fight. The protest continued. One of the things that the protesters were doing, they were picketing at salt works. Salt works like Dharasad. Do you know Badala? The pass में जो Badala है ना? That used to be a major salt work. अभी से नहीं, तुकाराम के समय से we have records of Tukaram coming here to collect salt and taking it to Pune. So people were picketing. Next one. पीपल वहां पे प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे कि नहीं जाने देंगे, नहीं टॉक्स में. सो गांधी, हु हैज सीन द मूवी गांधी? अरे यार बच्चों देखो, दिस अ लवली मूवी. सो because why I asked you, because that is very, very interesting. How the police came up on their horses and were beating. But the protesters were not worried. You can see they were beaten. Hundreds of them beaten. बुरी तरह से पीटा. But that benefited the movement, because some Western photographers were taking pictures. And the pictures appeared everywhere in the world. It was a PR disaster. Because everyone say, "Yeah, kya hai? This is a non-violent movement. How can you kill? How can be so repressive?" Next one, please. This shows how helpless the Governor General was. कि कुछ नहीं कर पा रहे. People were saying, "ले आप भी ले लो salt." Next one. तो जब इतना बुरा वक्त आ गया, and the British government, which actually depended a lot on US and other things, उनकी बहुत ज्यादा बदनामी हुई. तो जो ब्रिटेन का प्राइम मिनिस्टर था, लॉर्ड रैमसे मैकडोनाल्ड, he asked Lord वीरेंद्र, भैया किसी तरह से उसको छोड़ो, बुलाओ उसको, करो, बंद करो. So Gandhiji was released unconditionally, and he was invited for these talks. So the talks were held in that's the wrong date. They should be 1931. It's my mistake. I just noticed it. Okay, remember, साल भर चल रहा है. अप्रैल से शुरू हुआ था, साल भर चल रहा है. कांग्रेस पार्टी पे बैन आ गया था. Hundreds of thousands were in jail. Not just that. आज बुलडोजर राज है. उस वक्त they were confiscating property. So all the people who went inside, their property was confiscated, including Johar, Pandit Ji's own property in Allahabad. Confiscate ho gayi thi. People said, "Le lo, hum le lenge." So that continued. That's why Gandhiji had to be called. And in this, Lord Irwin again refused. Nahi ban karenge salt tax. But then by that time, people were getting very tired. कितनी देर कोई movement चल सकती है? So, but what Lord Irwin was smart. He said, "ठीक है, salt tax नहीं निकालेंगे, but we'll give you some concessions." So what were the concessions? They said, जो लोग salt lakes या seashore के आसपास रहते हैं, they can make their own salt. We won't stop them. They won't. उसके पहले you couldn't even pick up that salt. Remember, just सूखा salt पड़ा है. Even that picking that up was crime. So they got that. Plus, what did Gandhiji get? He said, "Release all my volunteers and return. Congress party की ban वापस ले लो and return all confiscated properties." Bulldozer बनाएगा नहीं, पर ये properties तो वापस आ गए. So all the properties were returned. Next one. See how many headlines it made in the world. Everywhere. Because by now the whole world was looking at us, thinking, how can these poor people actually fight this might of the empire? But when we look back, the salt tax abolishment, the salt satyagraha, didn't really achieve much. Because salt tax was jari raha. So it was finally removed. Next one, please. In the assembly in 1946, when there was a provisional constituent assembly, which was negotiating how to get independence, at that time, the salt tax was removed. But you know what's even funnier? In 1952, the salt tax came back in the name of salt. But the difference, ये 3-4%. आज भी तो आप और मैं 5% टैक्स देते हैं सॉल्ट पे. कभी बिल लेके देखना. But at least it doesn't bother us. Or at least the salt is plentifully available. It's not making a big difference. इतना कि हमको कहना पड़ रहा है सबको कम खाओ, ज़्यादा मत खाओ. Next one, please. So that is the story of. Hang on. That's not the end. That's not the end. Listen, इतने आसानी से नहीं छोड़ूंगी. हुआ क्या कि salt tax तो गया. That's more than 75 years now. पर उसके असर हमारे पास है. Bengal, Orissa, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, who used to export salt, देखा था? They are now dependent on the Gujarat salt. उनकी salt industry वापस नहीं आई. हमारे weavers आज भी struggle कर रहे हैं. That's why when we can, we should buy handmade. And third, and even more important, this is a new finding that they have come up with in the last 8-10 years. So many of us Indians suffer from heart problems and blood pressure. And modern research shows that this is the result of the salt deprivation that our ancestors suffered for 100 years. Exactly like what is happening with the blacks in America. So salt tax तो गया है, पर उसके असर आप पे और मेरे पास आज भी है. So we should never forget what the British did to us. And we should not fall prey to this nonsense कि British ठीक थे, Mughals ये थे, गलत. In the 17th century, during Mughal rule, India was the second most wealthy country in the world. By 1947, we were in the bottom. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
We have a question regarding the instant tax, the 5% tax that we pay today. The 5% tax that we pay today on salt, how much is that on? 5% of what? 5% of the total cost. So if you have paid 100 rupees for salt, which we don't, but someone will have 100 rupees for salt, नहीं जाता है. तो उस पर आपको 5 रुपए अलग से, of which 2.5% is a double sales tax, and 2.5% is the same.
Please be seated. I think there's one more question.
Ma'am, one question. We had a question of salt tax in the pre-British era. If you have any idea about it.
Well, there was a salt tax, and the salt tax was not taken at the point of where it was produced. Without any salt tax or any sort of tax, salt came from wherever it was made to the interiors. और जहाँ उसको बिकता था, वहाँ पे कुछ 2% tax हुई, about 1% of it, which the wholesalers had to pay when they before 7. I don't know how exactly, I still haven't come across how they were calculating it. But it was very limited. So much so that nobody thought about it. And I found out only because I read a number of account books, I read a number of inscriptions between 9th century to but it was very little. So it is never mentioned anywhere much. Ladies, you, आप लोगों को भी सवाल नहीं है. How come only the women are asking? Yeah, खाने में आपका हमको परेशानी कर रहे हैं. बगैर सॉल्ट का खाते देखो खाना फिर सवाल पूछो.
Ma'am, one more question. Why was only salt highly taxed so much?
Because you can live without other things. आप शुगर के बगैर रह सकते हैं. कपड़े कम पहन सकते हो. पर सॉल्ट आपको हर रोज सुबह शाम दिन रात चाहिए ही चाहिए. इसलिए अगर आप सॉल्ट पर टैक्स लगा सरकार तो उसकी गारंटीड इनकम है. क्योंकि आप कम कर नहीं सकते. जितना सॉल्ट जरूरी है उतना जरूरी है. Agricultural country like us, even our animals need salt. Remember, the cow needs 5 times more salt than the worker. And because it was becoming too long, I didn't talk about it. But the British didn't think that our animals needed salt. So animals, आज जो हम नस्लें काफी weak देखते हैं हमारे cattle वगैरह में. The large part of the problem was the salt that we didn't use. Exactly as it affects us, it has affected our animals. Anyone else?
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such rich, profound, and thought-provoking talk. There are many things regarding our philosophy, history, and values that we should take forward, that we are left with